Hello and welcome to Melee's Turnwheel, the series that takes a retroactive look at the Fire Emblem series chapter by chapter. I'm your host, I'm Main Melee Kirby, and today we're taking it back to chapters 12, 12X, and 13 of Fire Emblem Thracia 776. This is the second in what is hopefully 3 episodes that I'm uploading all at the same time. At this rate, it actually seems like I'm going to get them out about October, which is fitting because that is exactly where I stopped. I believe the last upload was in October of 2021. So hopefully these are going to go up around October of 2022. And I just realized that I left my keys in my door. And I can tell because the lanyard that I have attached to my keys is going through the door. I closed the door on it. So I'm going to go get those keys before someone steals them and breaks into my car. All right. So that first episode is edited, other than just like the intro and outro songs. So that should be good to go. So I'm recording this one, and then I just gotta play. I gotta edit this after that, and then I gotta play, record, and edit the last episode in 2 months, which under normal circumstances should not be a tall order. However, because it's me, it probably will be. Now, if you notice I sound a little bit different, that's because I actually bought a new microphone. I figured maybe the sunk cost of buying a new microphone will help keep me on track for this. I like it. It's not like a professional microphone or anything, but it's pretty good. Better than the piece of shit, $15 microphone I was using. I don't know, the specific model, but it's the brand name is Toner. And I was just based on my research, it seemed like probably the best microphone in the price range that I was looking for. I think it was $35, $40 or something like that. So not expensive, but definitely, a decent, microphone for something like this, just simple podcast recording. Now it is picking up kind of quiet, and I'm kind of still figuring out what to do with that. Right now I'm actually sitting pretty close to the microphone, so I'm hoping that that's not causing any of its own problems. But it seems like, for the most part, it's okay. If this is how I'm going to be recording all my episodes for the foreseeable future. So if you have to turn up your volume from what you were just listening to previously, just keep in mind that it'll just be this volume going forward. So hopefully it's not too bad. But other than that, there's nothing else keeping us from just talking about the chapters. So let's go ahead and start with chapter 12, which is called, pull up my notes here, The Bandits of Dacia. Okay, so after their little excursion in the dungeons of Fort Doldrum, I believe is what it was called, the time of the Liberation Army to get to Tahra in order to help defend the city from siege, is really starting to run out. They're really running out of time here, and so they're trying to make as quick time as possible. But they are actually getting pretty close. They've reached a place called Dacia Forest, which is on the outskirts of Tahra. So they're very close. However, there's one more obstacle standing in their way, and that is a group of bandits that is plaguing the area, led by a man named Pan. I don't know how much of this they tell you in this opening cutscene, but it's kind of like information that's been scattered throughout these various cutscenes, so just don't worry about it. They're led by Pan. That's all you got to worry about for right now. Now, this is a Fog of War map, which is the second one in a row. I think this is the first time that we're seeing 2 Fog of War maps in a row. It might actually be the last time that there are 2 Fog of War maps in a row, but I'm not 100% sure. I hope so. And it gets, spoiler alert, I guess, but it gets better because next map is also a Fog of War map, so that's 3 all right in a row. Granted, 2 of them are optional, but still, that's kind of bullshit. Now, after you start the map, after making all your battle preparations and everything, we see one of the enemies is named Salem. Salem, who I'm just gonna get it out of the way right now, looks exactly like Kakyoin from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which is my all-time favorite anime, by the way. Fucking love JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and I love Kakyoin. So I'm very okay with lumping Salem in with him. I think they're both great characters. Salem defected from the Lop-Tier Order, and that's a big deal. I mean, enemies defecting from their side and joining up with you is not unheard of, even at this point in the series, so early on. But usually it happens like in the middle of a map. Like you have Sita talk to Navarre, and he drops everything and joins her, right? This is one of the only times, or one of the first times at least, that we're hearing about a guy who has left beforehand, which I think is interesting. Like, it's not because of any of your actions, you know, it's because of various things going on in their life, which I think is more interesting generally. However, for his defection, you know, his quote-unquote betrayal, he was almost killed by the Lop-Tier Empire, and he was left for dead, but was saved by Pan, who is the leader of the Dacia bandits. He says that the reason he left is because I no longer understood the order, which is weird. I'm not going to dig too deep into that because it doesn't really make sense. As far as I'm aware, the Lop-Tier cult has always been about, like, you know, they want to bring Lop-Tier back, they want to cause as much pain and suffering as possible, they murder people, they kidnap children. You know, that's kind of always been their deal. I don't know, like, what changed to make Salem decide that he didn't want to be a part of it anymore. I have to wonder if maybe they kind of sheltered their kids. Like, if Salem doesn't seem that old, right? I don't think he's in his 30s or 40s. He's probably been raised to be a Lop-Tier cult member from the time he was young, and that makes me wonder if maybe they don't tell their child acolytes some of the more untoward stuff that they do, which I guess is possible. It doesn't really make sense why to me, but you know, it doesn't matter that much. The point is that he had a change of heart about where his allegiances lie, decided to leave, was saved by Pan, and at least for the time being, he has decided to help Pan out, and you know, because he thinks Pan's a good person. So the Dacia bandits are actually kind of described as being Robin Hood style bandits. You know, they steal from the rich, give to the poor. They're more interested in helping people than like pillaging and plundering and killing and raping, you know, all that stuff. Because they're generally pretty good guys, the misunderstanding here and the reason that you're fighting them is because Salem has been instructed to be on the lookout for Imperial troops who are coming to assist the siege, and they think that Leif's army is an Imperial troop army, which obviously it isn't. There's also another layer going on here. Parn talks about one of his new recruits for the thieves named Kolo, I think I'm pronouncing that right, who is kind of a hothead, is how he's described, and it's kind of suggested / stated that this guy is a piece of shit and is not in line with Pan's personal values, so they're the ones who are going around and kind of like, you know, killing people and burning down houses and stuff. Pan is not on board with this, but Kolo is kind of doing it behind his back, is the implication here. Pan is actually talking about ditching them. But anyway, so that's the excuse for having bandits that will actually attack houses in this, because there are bandits and they will attack houses, and some of these houses have good items. I'm not going to go over all of them, but they're pretty solid for the most part. There's like a scroll here. I think there's a master seal, maybe, I don't know, something like that. Salem actually flags up his sleep staff here, which is really nice because otherwise you wouldn't know he had it. He does have, I believe, infinite range, or at least close to infinite range. It's a pretty large attack width. No, it's infinite, I think. No, shit. Is it? I don't remember. It's been too long since I played these maps. But he can hit you pretty far with it, is the point. And like we discussed in a previous episode, status effects in this game never wear off. They just stick around forever. So if you get put to sleep, you're just kind of fucked, you know, unless you have a restore staff or, you know, whatever it may be. Now, this is the first map that I think is made significantly harder by not warp skipping it. I did talk, it's been a very long time, so you might not remember this, and I would completely understand. I did decide or pretty early on, that I'm not going to be warp skipping in this entire retrospective podcast. The reason being that I really want to experience the maps as they were designed. And I think, maybe with some exceptions, especially in this game, I think for the most part you can say that none of the maps in the series were designed with the intention of being warp skipped, or at least not as like the only way to do them and still like have them be well designed. This game, I think actually you could make a pretty reasonable argument that a few maps were designed that way. I think this is actually one of them. Now, warp skipping, I did talk a little bit about this, but it bears repeating since this is the first map where it actually like influenced anything. Warp skipping is kind of a nebulous term, and it can kind of mean a lot of different things. Generally speaking, first of all, I guess if you're uninitiated somehow, if you don't know enough about the series to know what I'm even talking about, warp skipping is the idea that there's a staff in this game called the warp staff, and depending on the game, its range varies, but basically its purpose is to have a unit be sent from one point in the map to another point in the map. And in this game specifically, and in some of the later games, it is infinite range. So if you have a unit, warp a unit somewhere else, it could be anywhere on the entire map as long as that is within... Actually, it doesn't even have to be within sight range. You can warp someone into Fog of War in this game, which is fucking insane. But you can do it. Now, the most common application of this, especially in like people who have played these games a lot, maybe who do some like challenge runs, speed running, low turn count runs, usually what they're used for is to warp a really powerful unit to the boss, kill the boss, and then warp the Lord to the throne or, wherever it may be to win the map, basically, is the gist of it. And I'm not going to do that. I might do some slight variations on that, like I did in this map, which we'll get into in a second. But for the most part, I'm going to be avoiding this style of play just because it basically, it says it right on the tin, you're skipping basically the whole map. And I don't want to do that. That's just not... I do it plenty casually. I think it's fun. I think it can, be fun to like break the game like this. But I want to play the maps because that's what I'm here for, right? I'm here to play the maps and I'm here to talk about them and judge them and rate them. It does make an interesting case of like, if a map is designed... I guess we'll get more into this later, but if you have warp as an option and you don't use it and that makes the map more fun or less fun, how is that going to factor into the map gauntlet of like knowing that warp is always an option? Does that make it so that the map is like worse than it would be otherwise or better than it would be otherwise? I don't know. We'll talk more about that later, I suppose, because it is very applicable here in this instance. But who knows? We'll figure it out. And I'm curious what you guys said. Actually, you know what? Maybe that'll be my question, right? Like, how should I talk about warp skipping in the map gauntlet? I guess we'll see. Okay, so I've gotten pretty off topic, but all of this is to say that this is a Fog of War map. The goal is to make it to this house that Salem is in front of. Salem will be constantly throwing sleep staffs out at you. I mean, he only has 3 uses of it, so he can't use it that much. But if he hits you with it, you're out of the map entirely. So you got to be careful. Now, what most people do, and actually what I did elect to do here, is to warp a combat unit, usually Finn. I think Finn is probably one of the best at it, maybe Fergus with the Brave Sword, whatever it may be. Warp that unit to Salem and capture him, because Salem is actually a recruitable unit. In order to get him, you need to have recruited him by the time you have to have captured him by the time you finish the map. I think that might be a guided requirement. There's a guided map attached to this as well, 12X. But we'll talk about what the requirements for that are later. So you could argue that this is warp skipping. I did not warp Leif to the end to capture or to seize the throne or whatever it was. So it's kind of like a gray area, And to me, it's just like, I'm still playing the map. I'm still experiencing the map. I guess you could argue that I'm not experiencing a core part of this map, which is supposed to be the idea of Salem like launching these sleep staff uses at you, I guess, you could argue that I'm not getting the full experience from that perspective, but that just sounds shitty. It sounds awful, so I don't really want to do that. So, I mean, obviously everyone's going to have their own opinion on what qualifies as warp skipping and what doesn't. Personally, I think that that's fine. I think that what I did is okay. I don't think it should count as warp skipping. But if you count it, then that's fair, and I'm sorry. I cheated. I lied. But you'll kind of see where I draw the line at a point, and you guys will see kind of more about that next chapter. This is mostly just to like keep my sanity a little bit. But other than that, it's actually a very straightforward map. I did actually forget to talk about a cutscene that happens before you get access to or before you start being able to control your characters. Sias, remember the character from chapter 6, is a red-haired priest who Galzus entrusted with Merida. Sias apparently took Merida here with the intention, I believe, of he knows that the Revolutionary Army, or the Liberation Army rather, is coming this way, and that she'll be able to meet up with them here. We don't get a whole lot of information about Sias or like why he's doing this. He seems kind of like like we kind of explored in chapter 6. He seems to just want to do the right thing, and he doesn't think that leaving Merida out to die would be cool. So he's just going to help her out. Now Merida I think she's unconscious at the start of this conversation. At some point they start talking with each other, and Sias actually gives her the Darkness Sword, which if you're familiar with Heroes, you'll know what this is. But basically the Darkness Sword is the same sword that she used. It was what possessed her. When back in chapter 5, she was fighting Avel because she was under the influence of this sword. She couldn't handle its it's like a cursed sword that influenced its power over her will or something like that. And Sias gives it to her and says, you should use this. And she says, absolutely fucking not. This is the sword that I used against my own mom, and I really don't want to have to, that was a traumatizing experience, and I don't want to have to relive that every time I look at this fucking sword. So please do not give it to me. But he basically gives her a pep talk and says, listen, that sword was able to, exert its influence over you, but at the end of the day, it is just a sword. And if you want to be a true sword master like your mom was, you're going to have to learn how to wield any sword. And it's just a tool. What matters is what you bring to the table and what you put into it. So you should be able to control it. And so she takes it, and she is unless there's some secret cutscene that no one's discovered yet, Merida never loses her sanity to this thing ever again. I'm actually going to go ahead and read the actual excerpt from the script because I think it's really fucking cool, and he puts it way more eloquently than I can. So he says, "You want to carry on your mother's legacy and become a sword master, do you not? If that's your goal, you must learn to understand weapons in a different light. All weapons, all swords, are the product of human intent. They are what they are because their creator wished them to be that way. Holy blades and cursed blades alike were forged by the hands of men. They are an extension of will, a manifestation of purpose. Take the shadow sword, darkness sword, whatever. Use it for your own ends. Assert your will over that which once robbed you of it. In doing so, you can rewrite the legacy of this evil blade into something more. Use its power to forge a new future for it and for yourself. If you wish to live as a sword master, you must learn to cherish all blades, for they are the tools that allow you to enact your will. See them not as reminders of the past, but as a means to achieve a new future. For if you cannot unshackle yourself from the past, you cannot call yourself a sword master." That is fucking raw and based as fuck, and I think that's actually one of the coolest lines in the game so far. Shit, that's really, really good. Sias is a great character, and I think he's actually a lot of people's favorite character in the game. I can totally understand why. He's very understated. He doesn't actually play a big role in the story, but when he does show up, he does some really cool stuff and has some really interesting moments like this one. And yeah, I would agree. I think Sias is definitely one of the best characters in this game for sure. So at this point, Marita, I think it's like a couple turns into the map. Marita shows up and is a playable unit, and she is on our side. So let's talk a little bit about her, because I'm not going to forget like I did last time. Marita is a Myrmidon. She's like level 1 or level 3 or something like that. She's really low. She's kind of, I don't want to call her an Est because she doesn't join late enough to be an Est. Archetypes are very weird, and there's like a whole debate around like, should archetypes even exist? Are they like too narrow? Do they not like allow for differences in units? Like a lot of people would call Marita an Est, but that is definitely not accurate. And if you say like, oh, she's an Est but she joins early, then that's not an Est, so what's the point? It's just shorthand, right? I kind of like archetypes as a way to succinctly describe a unit in terms that people familiar with the series will more easily understand. So for the purposes of this, I'm just going to say she's kind of similar to an Est. She starts off low level, she has pretty good growth rates, but she joins, chapter 12 isn't exactly early, but it's not late either, it's like mid-game. So she's okay. She's definitely alright. There's like so many better sword units is the thing, right? Like you got Fergus, who's on horseback. You got Shiva. Later you got Shannon, who's obviously the best unit in the entire series. But for the most part, she's fine, right? Like if you want to use her, she's an important character to the story, and I think a lot of people will want to use her for that reason alone. But if you don't mind that as much, or if you don't really care about that, there's really not much of a point to using her. She does get access to Astra later, which is in one of my favorite cutscenes in the entire series. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I believe that's chapter 15, if I'm not mistaken. Which will be next episode, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to this map. We get Marita, we get some houses, we have to kill some bandits. It's very, very, very easy, which is good, I guess. Fog of War, I prefer when Fog of War maps are easy, because when they're difficult, then it just feels cheap, because you're not being given adequate, opportunity to prepare for the challenges that lie ahead, and that's just bullshit, and I don't like that, so. Okay, so this is funny. There's actually a scene that you miss if you capture Salem right away. On turn 5, Tina, who's another character who we'll see, comes out and says, starts talking to Salem. They have a little bit of a conversation, and this is supposed to be your flag that Tina is around, and that she is a recruitable character, and that she is the sister of Safi. She and Salem just have a really nice, cute, wholesome conversation. Tina's like a young girl, she's probably like 9 or 10, she's very small. Salem actually says that once his wounds heal up, he's going to take Tina, and they're going to go find her, which obviously is unnecessary, because Safi's coming right to them. But the problem is that, Tina, if you don't have any prior knowledge of this game, this is fucking bullshit. Come on, man. You got bombarded by sleep staves. You have no idea what the next map is structured in a really weird way. It's just so fucking stupid. I hate this goddamn game. God, it's just so fucking dumb. Okay, so the fact that the optimal way to play this chapter is to capture Salem right away so that he doesn't put you to sleep. But then you miss the only hint that you get. To be fair, to the game's credit, Safi and Tina look extremely similar, so you'd probably be able to figure it out. But if you don't see the scene, you would have no reason to know that Tina even exists, because you can't see her from the prep screen of the next map, I don't think. So, I don't know. Yeah, it just seems kind of stupid to me. Oh, and on turn 20, I think the turn limit to get the guide is turn 20. Because that's when dawn break. The reason for Fog of War is because it's really dark out, and if dawn breaks, then the Fog of War goes away. Oh yeah, bring Olwen to this map because there's a house that will give her a magic ring instead of a vulnerary, and the magic ring is better. Yeah, so in order to get chapter 12X, the chapter must be cleared in less than 20 turns. Capturing Salem is not needed for the requirement. It is recommended that he is captured, however, due to his great utility and his sleep staff. Okay, so yeah, you don't actually need to capture Salem in order to get the Gaiden, but you do need to capture him if you want to recruit him, which you should. But yes, it seems like the only actual Gaiden requirement is beating the map in 20 turns, which, unless you're taking the time to grind and, get all the units built up, it's extremely easy to do this map in under 20 turns. It's very, very, very simple. I don't like this map. I think it's definitely better than the next one. The next one is like one of my least favorite maps in the series. Definitely one of my least favorite in this game for sure. But it's not good. It still sucks ass. Fog of War sucks. It's really boring. The story is kind of neat. I love that scene between Sias and Marita. It's like one of the best scenes in the game so far. But otherwise, it's just whatever. I don't really have much else to say. I could sit here and complain about it for a while, but I'm just gonna move on because what's the point? Okay, so the next map is Chapter 12X, which is called Dandelion. Okay, so I'm immediately eating my words because in the opening cutscene to Chapter 12X, we do see Tina. And Tina does suggest that she has a sister and that she fasts. So it's a pretty heavy implication that Safi is her sister. So there's that, I guess. Not as stupid as I originally thought. I do think it sucks that you have to miss out on the cute little conversation between Salem and Tina, but it is what it is. So the cutscene opens with Pan talking to a couple of his guys, saying like, hey, what's going on? It seems like someone's broken into the mansion, and they think it's the Empire. Again, there's a misunderstanding going on here. The Dandelions think that Leif's army is the Imperial army. Leif's army, it's not really stated what's going on, but it seems like they thought that, because the bandits were attacking villages and stuff, because those were the guys not under, that Parn didn't like, that were kind of hotheads and doing stupid shit. They seem to be under the impression that the bandits are, bad guys and are trying to, destroy this area. We actually get a shitload of recruitable characters here, and there's a lot to talk about. So I'm gonna stop beating around the bush and just get right into it. A lot of characters actually seem to have a relationship with Pan. Leif and Lara both have unique dialogue if you bring them to this chapter. The thing is that only 6 characters can come or something like that. Hold on, there's a reason that they give in the script of the last chapter. Yeah, okay, so because they say that the men are exhausted, Dorius says that we can only spare a small strike team of 5 soldiers to accompany you. So there are only 6 units that you can bring to this map. One of them has to be Leif, obviously. So you're probably going to want to bring, you kind of want to bring someone who can warp. You're going to want to bring, I think Salem joins just by himself, so I guess that's 7 if you count Salem. You're definitely going to want to bring Lara. You're probably going to want to bring, Fergus or somebody. A good combat unit who can capture. So you don't really have a lot of flexibility with who you can bring here. But Leif and Lara both have unique dialogue here that implies that they kind of know who Pan is and kind of have a relationship with him. Lara, the problem is that this only happens if you're already bringing Lara, which is a good chance you'll do because she's a thief and you might want to bring thieves to this map. But basically she says, you really need to let me talk to Pan because I know him, he's a good guy, I think you'll see reason, please just let me talk to him. And Leif says, okay, so if you bring Lara, that's your flag that you should have her talk to him. Now here's the deal with this map, right? It's actually a very complex map with a lot of moving pieces that are really easy to miss. So here's what you gotta know. First of all, this is a Fog of War map, which, 3 in a row, really fucking stupid. I don't know why this had to be a Fog of War map. I don't like it. But it is what it is. Second of all, there are, I think for the first time in the entire series, and maybe even the last time in the entire series, there are enemy dancers, which is a first. Pan just has a lot of dancers around for some reason. I don't know. I don't judge. But he's got a lot of them. And here's the thing about that is you need to not kill any of them if you want to get the best rewards. We'll touch more on that in a second. Now, what you want to do is you want to get to the end of the map and talk to Pan as soon as possible. Whether it's with Salem, I think you can do it with Lara, or you could just kill him, I guess, also. Somehow, some way, you need to get Pan out of the picture. The best way to do this is to warp Lara into the throne room, which, if you look up a picture of the map, you'll know where it is, or you could just trial and error it out. Warp Lara into the throne room, have her talk to Pan, and that'll accomplish a couple things. First of all, it'll make Pan blue, and then it'll also do something for Lara, but we'll talk about that in a second. Now, like I said, the best way to do this is to warp Lara. However, this is kind of where I draw the line, right? Like, warp skipping this map is, in my opinion, tantamount to just like completely, I don't know if I would say ruining. I think improving the experience personally, but you're pretty much changing what the map, like how the map plays. You're playing it in an entirely different way at that point, because what happens when Pan gets talked to or killed is that the enemies that were in the map all start to run away. All of them, every single one. Dancers, thieves, mercenaries, soldiers, all of them just gone. They leave. And that's good. That's good for you. You want that to happen because that'll make it so that the thieves don't go for the treasure chests. There are a lot of treasure chests in this map. Some of them have some really good items. Some of them have not great items. But if you talk to Pan on turn 1, all the thieves will run away and you don't have to worry about any of the thieves going for the treasure. If you don't talk to Pan right away, then you will maybe be able to save like a couple of chests, but for the most part they're going to get stolen and the thieves are going to get away, which is really annoying. Thankfully, most of the treasure in this map isn't very good. The best thing, I think, is probably, I believe it's a Master Seal, and that is in a chest that is positioned outside, which the thieves will actually never go to, so you don't have to worry about that. So basically, you have two ways you can play this map. Generally speaking, there's obviously infinite ways you can play this map depending on how you want to go about it. But the two major ways are to warp Lara to the throne room, or to warp somebody to the throne room, and just talk to Pan, make the map really easy, really simple. Then it's basically just like walking from point A to point B. The second way is to play the map straight, and I think that this is a mistake, and you should never do it because this map is fucking awful to play straight. But I did it anyway because I felt like warp skipping it was just not... Like, I felt like warping Lara to the end was basically just warp skipping it, because at that point, like, you don't have to fight any enemies, you don't have to do anything other than just go around and get all the treasure. It's not, like, interesting or fun. I mean, it's not fun the other way either, but at least you're, like, doing something and if you play it straight. So that's where I'm at with it personally. Now, if you do play the map straight, a lot of shit gets way more annoying. First of all, there's a couple of recruitable characters. First of all, one of them is named Trude. He's the guy that Pan was talking to at the beginning of the map. The way that you recruit him is by, I believe you can either have Pan or Parn talk to him, but if you play the map straight, he's actually going to get in your way or try to run away or whatever it is. You need to put him to sleep. And if you put him to sleep, you can't actually recruit him with Pan because, listen, I get it, right? Like, it makes sense narratively and diegetically or whatever, but in this game, if someone is put to sleep, they cannot have a conversation. Fair enough, right? Like, I get it. It doesn't make any sense why they would be able to have a conversation if they're asleep, but this is an instance where I think convenience should have won out over realism, because it's just fucking annoying. The way that you're gonna probably have to do it is that, because Trude is one of the characters that runs away too. You know, like, all the characters run away. Trude just gets the hell out of there. So you're probably going to have to put him to sleep with Salem's sleep staff. That's another reason to capture Salem right away, actually, is so that he doesn't just use the sleep staff willy-nilly and break it, and then you won't have a way to recruit Trude. You put him to sleep with the sleep staff, and then you capture him with, I used Fergus. You might have, like, maybe you'll have, like, a good Dagdar or a good Marty that can do it, whatever it may be. But if you have him captured at the end of the map, then you recruit him anyway, so it doesn't matter. You can pretty much give up on getting the treasure chests. They're all gonna go away. There's a couple of them that you might be able to get, but they're not really worth it. There's one that's like an armor slayer. You can probably save that one, but I don't really care about the armor slayer, so I never really bothered. But basically, yeah, when you play the map straight, it's more or less you're just walking from one end of the map to the other, killing some enemies, making sure that you're careful not to kill Trude, and getting to the end with Lara and Safi. Those are the two characters you need to get to the end. And obviously, eventually Leif to capture the throne. But you need to get Lara to talk to Pan. There's a couple characters that can do it. I believe Salem is one of them. Lara is another one, and you're going to want to do it with Lara, because if you do it with Lara, something very interesting happens. This is something I talked about when Lara first showed up, and that is that she will actually switch class lines, which is something that up to this point has been pretty much unheard of. In later games we would get like reclassing and stuff like that, but for the most part, in these earlier games, if a character is in a class line, they just stay in that class line. If you're lucky, you're playing Sacred Stones, and that game has like split promotion paths, so you could do like maybe give Gilliam a horse, or give you could pick whether you got swords or axes or something like that, whatever it may be. But you're still in the same like general class tree. If you recruit Pan with Lara, then she goes from being a thief to being a dancer. And this is the only way to get a dancer in this game. So it's really, really good to recruit Pan using this method, because dancers are borderline overpowered. I wouldn't say overpowered. They're just very good, and they have like a lot of positive aspects. They're just very good and handy to have. And that's when all the enemies are going to start running away. Now the other thing you can do here is you can recruit Tina with Safi. Oh, the other part of playing this map straight, this is fun, is that Tina is going to use her unique staff. Tina is a very interesting unit, and we'll talk more about her later. But she has two staves that are actually, I guess not weapons, but they're personal staves. Only she can use them, similarly to Safi with Hammer. And one of those is the Thief Staff. The Thief Staff will allow you to take an item out of somebody's inventory if Tina's magic is higher than theirs. So basically, as you're running through this map, she will constantly be trying to steal items from you, and she will probably end up breaking the Thief Staff, because I believe it only has 4 or 5 uses. I actually ended up using my first use of the Hammer and Staff on the Thief Staff, because the Thief Staff is very good. Is yet another reason to warp skip this map, because you don't want to have it waste uses like that. But I guess that's part of the intended experience of playing this. More than any other map, I think you could argue was designed to be warp skipped. I think Kaga legitimately planned for people to warp to the end of this map, and made the alternative as annoying as fucking possible. And it's impossible for me to know what Kaga is thinking. I just have to stick with my principles and say, like, I'm not going to warp skip, just period, even if I think it was probably the intended way to go through the map. But whatever. So, yeah, you recruit her with Safi, and they have a fun little conversation. If there's one thing this map does really well, it's that, like, a lot of the character interactions are very fun. When Tina finds out that the quote-unquote the Empire has arrived, Pan kind of suggests, like, oh, are you gonna sneak off? You don't think I would let you get away, would you? And he's like being very like sinister, kind of being an asshole. It seems like he might be like manipulating or abusing Tina in some way. And then when you recruit her with Safi, she says, like, oh, he's been absolutely horrible to me. He's been doing unspeakably cruel and evil things to me. And Safi is like, oh my God, oh, holy shit. He's traumatizing my poor little sister. Please, tell me, what is he like? I mean, like, the implication, obviously, is that he's either, like, physically harming her or, God forbid, like, some kind of sexual abuse or something like that. So Safi is prepared for the absolute worst. And Tina says he has been taking spiders and, like, flaunting them in her face to scare her. And that is her idea of cruel and unspeakable torture. And it's just very cute and very funny. Pan is a very interesting character. I think he gets a little bit of a bad rap, I guess. I think there's a lot going on here that kind of makes him come across as more unlikable than he really is. I think he still does some pretty fucked up stuff, but we'll get to that, I guess. I mean, that's basically the end of the map. At the end of the day, it's really just, do you want this map to be a walking from point A to point B, or do you want it to be walking from point A to point B with a lot of really annoying shit going on in the middle? Like, the enemies are not strong. They're not, powerful. You can get rid of them really easily. It's just fucking obnoxious. You get your shit stolen by Tina. All the treasure's gone. It makes it harder to keep the dancers alive. That's another thing. You need to, if all the dancers manage to escape unharmed, or they need to be alive by a certain turn, you can capture some extra, like some dancers come in, and you can steal some items off of them. I actually only managed to get one of them. There's two. One of them has a Master Seal, and one of them has a Warp Staff. I only managed to get the Master Seal because of some shit with like the stairs being blocked. It's just really annoying. I don't like this map at all. So to end off this map, let's go ahead and talk about all the characters that we recruited. There's a lot. I didn't actually talk about Marita as a character at all, but I mean, I think that she's fine. I think that her interaction with Sias is really good, but more so for Sias than it is for her. She's being completely reasonable, right? She had this horrible traumatic experience with this sword, and now this guy who she doesn't know like at all is telling her, you got to use this sword, you got to make it, a part of you or whatever, and she's like, no, I don't want to do that. This sword ruined my life, basically. I don't want any part of this, which is cool. It kind of gives the impression of like, she is this really vulnerable kid, basically. Marita's young. I think she's supposed to be like 16 or something. This really vulnerable kid, very much out of her depth, trying to live up to her mom's legacy without really being prepared to do that. And that's pretty cool. I'm extrapolating a lot, right? That's not explicit, but I think that that's pretty heavily implied. And I think it's a good character archetype, and I think is one that people really resonate with, because I think, and I don't mean to get dark or self-deprecating here, but I personally can absolutely relate to the idea of not living up to your own expectations of what you should be. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. So it's a very easy trope to empathize with, and I think that makes it work really well. But otherwise, I think that she's just a pretty kind of forgettable character. There is one of my favorite scenes in the entire series involves Marita, and it is coming up next episode, so look forward to that. But otherwise, she pretty much just doesn't do anything. She's just an alright character. Now, let's talk about the much more interesting character that we recruit this episode, which is Salem. Salem is, as we talked about, he looks like Kakyoin, which is already a big plus. But more interestingly than that, he was a member of the Labyrinth cult. The Labyrinth cult, if you are not aware, it's been a while since we've had an episode, but if you don't remember, the Labyrinth cult is comprised pretty much entirely by dark mages. Now, this is a pretty big deal because, yes, Salem is a dark mage, which means that he is actually the first dark mage playable in the entire series. So, congratulations to Salem, because I think he is one of the most. He started one of the most popular character classes in the entire series, which is dark mage. Obviously, we got people like Tharja, who's, we'll get there when we get there, I guess. But it's just cool, right? I think I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I think that the way that the series handles the dark mage class over the years is really, really cool. Ranging from people like Salem, who were just straight up evil murdering monsters, Salem probably wasn't, but was part of a group that is just evil. like dark mages in the series are traditionally just like comically evil bad guys. But in some games, kind of like Alib, especially, Alib does it really. This is like one of my favorite things about Alib. But even like to a lesser extent, Sacred Stones does this a little bit. I think it's explored a little bit in like, not really Tellius, Three Houses maybe. I think that what Alib, and I guess mostly just Alib and Magville, do really well is that they kind of portray dark magic as more of a, not necessarily evil, but more like potent, eldritch kind of primordial kind of magical force, as opposed to anima, and light has been pretty consistently shown to be like holy magic, but anima is more like in tune with nature. Dark magic is traditionally much more. It's kind of hard to. I think primordial is probably the only fitting word. It is not necessarily evil inherently, but it comes from a source which is very dangerous and very misunderstood. And I think that this is kind of why a lot of dark mages get a bad rap. Now, in this game, obviously, all the dark mages except for Salem who defected are just evil monster men who want to kill children. Like, that's not. I'm not trying to argue with that. But I do think it's funny or interesting to see kind of like where the series takes that in other games. Kind of takes it in different directions. Salem himself is a pretty mundane character. I think I like him more for what he represents, more so than I like him as a character. I mean, he's a nice guy, right? Like, that conversation with Tina is very cute. He just seems like a nice guy. He kind of just wants to find a place in the world. And that's a good vibe. I really like that. I think, characters like Geets from FE7 do that way, way better. But, that Geeks doesn't exist yet. So for right now, that's what it is. He kind of actually, in a way, he kind of reminds me of Holland, right? Like, there seems to be like this archetype of, again, archetype maybe isn't the right word. Like, it's not a Fire Emblem archetype. It's just a narrative storytelling archetype across fiction, which has existed for hundreds of thousands of years. Is this idea of like, some people are just like lost, wayward souls who are, they're told one thing and they're experiencing another thing, and they're trying to parse their lived experience with what they're being told, and the dissonance from that causes like some forlorn, lost spirit kind of soul searching journey, something like that. I think that is kind of the description that fits Salem best. He's just kind of lost and wants to find a place where he can figure out what he wants to do, right? And he ends up settling in with the Liberation Army, which is a good place for him, I think. Now, in terms of gameplay, Salem is very much just a mage. He's kind of bad, actually, if you want to look at him from that angle. He doesn't get a lot of, he's not very fast. He doesn't have very high stats or whatever. The main thing that people use him for, and the main reason why people think he's a good unit, is because he can get warp pretty easily. I think he starts like when he he can use staves like right out of the gate. When he promotes, he gets like an extra rank, and then if you use it enough times, you get to A rank. It's just it's pretty easy to get him to warp, and that's why he's considered a good unit. Now, considering I'm using warp a lot less, I don't know necessarily that that's how I'm gonna feel about him. He's kind of in terms of combat, he's just not that good right out of the gate. I mean, the thing with this game is that scrolls can make just about anybody good, so I'm sure that I'll come around on him eventually. But for the most part, I don't think he's anything to write home about in terms of gameplay, unless you care about warp. Which, I mean, I care about warp, but it's not going to be as important to me as it is for most people playing through this game. All right, next, I guess in order would be technically we don't get Trude until next chapter, but we'll talk about him here anyway. Trude is. He's just a Myrmidon, He's like the fifth in this fucking game. Was it you got Marita, you got Shiva, you got Shanam later, you get Trude. I feel like there's another one that I'm forgetting. Oh, I guess Avo herself counts. Marita becomes a hero, so she doesn't count. Or not Marita, Macha. So yeah, they're it's just another mediocre Myrmidon. It doesn't seem like any better or worse than like Shiva or whatever. He does get Nile, which is kind of a good skill. So I guess if that's up your alley, he's one of those characters. Like if you wanted to make a contest for most forgettable Fire Emblem character, I think Trude would probably be in the running. He's just so fucking boring, man. She's just there. He exists. His character is basically non-existent. He seems to be good friends with Pan. But that's it, really. That's all we know about him. I already talked enough about Tina, where I don't think I'm going to spend a long time on her, but she gets 2 unique staves. She starts off actually with very bad stats, which, you might argue, you don't need stats to be a healer, which I think is true most of the time. But in this game, as we've seen, missing, the fact that staves can miss means that skill is an important skill for these guys to have, or an important stat for these guys to have. For Tina specifically, magic is also pretty important because it's going to affect what she's able to steal with her thief staff. So we want her magic to be as high as possible. I think she's a lot of fun to use. I think that she has such a unique presence. She influences the game in really fun ways. You can use her to get some items that you might not be able to get until later, or maybe some that you aren't usually able to get at all. Her other unique staff is the Unlock Staff, which just opens up doors and chests. I think is it chests too, or just doors? I believe she can open like any lock, basically. That only has a few uses. I find a lot less use from that one than I think the Thief Staff, but it's still good to have every now and again. Sometimes, if you have your thief across the map and you really need to get a chest open, it's good to have an alternative option. In terms of her character, she's a little kid, she seems to really care about her sister. She has a very fun relationship with Pan. She's scared of bugs, and Pan seems to be kind of tormenting her with the bugs, quote unquote. She has a cute cute conversation with Salem. Whatever her reasons for staying may be, she clearly doesn't want to. She clearly doesn't she's not miserable all the time, right? She has a good relationship with these guys for the most part. She just thinks that Pan's kind of an asshole, which to be fair he kind of is. But we'll I think that she's a fun character. I like her. I think she's probably, as far as this game goes, I don't think this game has a fantastic cast of characters. So I think that she might actually be one of my favorites so far. Alright, and last but not least, let's talk about Pan. Pan is a thief. I kind of call him Pan or Parn interchangeably because that's one of the names that's changed over the years with the different patches. I believe in the patch I'm using it's Pan. I don't remember for sure, but anyway, Pan is a thief, and he's definitely the best one that we've gotten so far. Now that Lara is a dancer, she kind of has her own utility. But Lifis actually is pretty much rendered completely obsolete by Pan. Pan is a very good unit. He has a lot of good stats. He has decent build. He can steal a good amount of stuff. Lifis, unless you like Lifis for some reason, which I think Lifis is a fun character as well. At this point, Lifis should probably just hit the bench unless you are explicitly interested in using Lifis, because Parn is better in just about every conceivable way. He does join with something called the King Sword, which is a very, 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 very good item. It's a brave sword. It also, I think it might even have a little crit on it. It's basically a brave sword. That's the main thing, is that it's a brave sword. It is not exclusive to him though. Most people I've seen actually choose to give it to Leif. I don't know why Leif specifically, but I think that's a perfectly fine choice for it. Anyone can use it though, and that's part of what makes it such a good fucking sword. I'm gonna have to start speaking up again because my audio is picking up kind of quiet again. So hopefully that all came through loud and clear. I hope I know how to re-record this episode. That would suck, but we'll see. In terms of character, Pan is very interesting because we see a lot of stuff that implies that Pan is a piece of shit, and then it kind of goes back and says, "Oh no, he's actually not that bad. He's kind of it's kind of just a misunderstanding." He does some cool stuff, right? Like I think being a Robin Hood type thief is fucking awesome, and eat the rich. This is not a joke. Capitalism is a sham, and fuck the system. But I think that he's definitely got that going for him. He's pretty based in that regard, but maybe not so much in others. Like for example, there's a scene where it's actually the Lara recruitment scene where Pan says that he was very interested in her special dance back when Lara was a dancer. Now he does clarify that once he realized that she was just at that point I guess she was probably like a teenager or something. Once he realized that, he was like, "Oh well, shit, I'm not going to jail, boys. I'll see ya." So he backed off, which is good. That's more honestly. I think obviously that's still pretty skeevy, right? But I think that in a I don't want to make any generalizations or stereotype anything, but I think it's pretty well established among people who enjoy anime and other Japanese media that, at least in terms of like mainstream entertainment industries, Japan is one of the worst offenders when it comes to sexualizing minors and having like other characters sexualize minors and having that just be considered like okay and a completely normal thing to do. So I think that actually this might be even like a localization change, which you can make all the arguments you want about like censorship or people who they're changing the intent of the author. If the intent of the author is to have a character creeping on a 13-year-old, change the intent of the author. I don't give a shit. Fuck that. So I think my point is that it's nice to see a character who admits that they were creeping on a young girl and then realized that they were underage and went, shit, all right, never mind. Because that's not like, that's not, I don't think that's like a crime. Is it creepy? Yeah, kinda. But I don't think I don't think that he deserves to be judged super harshly for that. Like he doesn't deserve to go to jail or whatever. Or get hanged or whatever they would do to him here. I don't know. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. I don't really want to get into the morality of this situation. It's pretty fucked up no matter how you look at it. I'm just saying it could be worse, which is not a very high bar. Anime has my standards for this kind of thing in the gutter, but here we are. Yeah, so I think in that regard, Pan's like, okay. The relationship with Tina is very interesting because, like, I've seen people, and I'm not trying to say that this is unreasonable because I think the game is very ambiguous with this for some reason. I've seen people under the impression that Pan was like actually keeping Tina hostage or prisoner of some kind, which is not an unreasonable conclusion to reach because if you think about it, like obviously they're playing it up for jokes, right? Like, oh, he doesn't actually torture her, he just like uses bugs to scare her, but first of all, it's kind of a dick move, like even if it's just a joke, right? Like, okay, maybe it's a little funny, but it's not, he's still kind of being an asshole, right? But I think the bigger thing is like, why is she there? Like, it's never really given a proper explanation. If you assume that Tina is not telling the truth and that he is not actually holding her there against her will, then I don't see why she would be there. She seems like she wants to leave, right? She wants to go find Safi. The best, and this is basically coming from nothing. There's no evidence for this other than just like circumstantial, but I think that the most likely explanation is that she left Tahra to go find Safi. Pan and the Dandelions found her and realized that if she was to go off on her own, she would get hurt. So they decided to, quote-unquote, hold her hostage in order to like keep her safe so that she wouldn't go off on her own trying to find Safi. And I do think that she has had plenty of opportunities to leave. In the last chapter, there was a scene where she brought food to Salem. If she really wanted to leave, she could have just taken off right? Like, what was the point? Salem also says that he is going to take her to look for Safi. I don't see why he would why if Pan had a problem with that, why would Salem be offering? I think it's much more likely that Pan just doesn't want her to get hurt and thinks that she probably needs some kind of escort or guard to help her stay safe while on this journey to look for her sister. So the plan, I guess, is to let Salem heal up, and then he is going to go and help her with that. But Safi comes to her before that ever becomes necessary, so whatever. It works out in the end, I suppose. Now, all of this is to say that I don't think Parn is a particularly bad person. I think that he definitely does some questionable stuff, but I think at his heart, at his core, he is a good guy. He does want to say fuck. He does want to eat the rich. He does want to say fuck capitalism, and give to the poor. And I think that overall, that puts a lot more points in the based column than the creeping on young girls puts in the accidentally creeping on young girls puts in the cringe column. Although that is pretty cringe. I'll give you that. That's pretty fucking cringe. But I think he's definitely, the scales are leaning more towards based in that dichotomy. Okay, we're almost done here, ladies and gentlemen. We're wrapping up. We have one more chapter to get through, and it's actually, holy shit, guys, we made it. We made it through the storm. This is our first good chapter in a while. I actually think that chapter 13 is pretty good and pretty fun. I had a good time with it. First of all, it's our first Fog of War map, our first non-Fog of War map since chapter 11, so it feels like it's been fucking forever. But we are here. We have made it. Basically, this is it, right? We've made it. This is Tahra. At this point, we need to break the Imperial siege and have Leif make it inside of the city in order to, help with its defense. So the goal is to get Leif to escape. It is also a defend map in the sense that kind of like chapter 9, right, where the escape point is also a defend point. If an enemy gets onto it, then the city will be captured and it's the game is over. You've lost the map. Now Leif starts off pretty far, but thankfully we have some guys guarding the city. It's the last line of defense, and it seems like everything has come to an end here. They're getting ready to make their last stand. Oh, I forgot to say that this is chapter 13, the walled city. My bad. Yeah, and there's just like a little spiel about Duchess Lenoan is now the leader of Tahra after her dad died. Originally, this is just some extra lore here. Originally, Tahra managed to keep itself as a free and independent city, not part of the Empire, by saying that we are not going to interfere with your operations in other parts of the Master District. It's kind of fucked up, but they had to kind of keep themselves in a good position. I guess I can see why they would do it. As Leif is approaching the castle, or the city, I suppose, we get a little bit of a snippet of a conversation between the bad guys. It seems like there are actually reinforcements on the way. So even though the siege is already bad, it's about to get worse. So let's hop on and make sure that everyone makes it out okay. In the city, alongside Lenoan, we see a few unfamiliar faces. Later, we will know these guys as Dean and Ida. We don't know who they are right now, but we will meet them properly next chapter. But for right now, they just kind of pop up and say "Oh, Lenoan, what are we gonna do? The city's under attack, whatever, yada 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 yada." But there is another character here who we actually do meet right away, whose name is Glade. Glade, if you recall, is Selfina's husband. Selfina being a character who we recruited back in chapter 9. Glade kind of laments something for a bit, which is interesting. He says that Prince Shannon is in the city, but is refusing to help them for some reason. Now, if you remember FE4, first of all, Shannon shouldn't be anywhere near here. Around this time, he would be like in this area, kind of. When we meet up with him in FE4, he's tracking down Baomeng, which is in the Yi Desert, which isn't too terribly far from here. It's not like across the continent or anything. But there's really no reason why he would be hanging out in Tahra, of all places. So I don't see why he would be here. And the other thing, too, is like if Shannon was here, he would be helping, right? Like, Shannon's a good guy. So this definitely raises a few red flags, I think, for most people. Like, first of all, why is Shannon here? That doesn't make any sense. And second of all, more importantly, why is he not helping? You know, the people here are in really serious danger, and he's a really, really tough dude. They could really use his help. But he is refusing to lift a finger, and so Glade kind of says, like, oh, I guess he's just big talk, and the legends don't really mean much. Now, probably, you're probably going to figure out something else is going on here. But for just now, let's pretend that they're all accurate and that Shannon just isn't doing anything for some reason. Glade says, all right, well, in that case, we're going to have to they also say that Prince Shannon is doing a lot of womanizing, which is very much unlike Shannon. So I think at that point you're probably going to figure out that something weird is going on here. There's an imposter among us. Ha ha ha. I did the thing, guys. Ha ha ha. Anyway, so it seems like, maybe there's something fishy going on here. But Glade says, if he's not going to help us, then we're going to have to defend the city ourselves. And then we cut to Leif. Leif and August are kind of surprised. It's not laid out explicitly, I don't think, but it seems like the implication that I got is that the Empire is attacking the city, and that they actually weren't expecting that. They thought that the Empire might hold off a little bit longer, but it seems like they were wrong, basically, and the Empire is attacking earlier than they were expecting, basically. However, they both come to the conclusion that sitting things out just isn't an option, so they need to take the risk and go straight into Tahra. I think, August agrees with Leif, but he's, of course, approaching it from a more cynical, kind of calculating perspective, which is like, basically, if you chicken out now, no one's ever going to trust you again. I'm not making that up, am I? I feel like that's kind of where he goes with it. Yeah, basically, he's like, if we can't do anything here, then you're going to lose the support of the people, and we really need the support of the people right now, so you gotta get Tahra back, bro, whatever it takes. So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty straightforward map. What I really like about this map is that it does the thing that I love, which is making you fight on two fronts at the same time. Now, Leif and his army are all together in one section of the map. However, there is something else going on. In the meantime of Leif getting to the city, Glade is leading his own force of troops. Glade is a playable character right out of the gate. We'll talk about him in a minute. But alongside Glade, we actually have a few extra units that are basically green units. I think that they, in modern Fire Emblem, they would become green units. But in this game, they are actually blue, and we can control them. They don't have any names, they don't have any faces. They're just generic soldiers, but we have control over them. They are full blue units. They don't, even if they survive the map, they don't, nothing, you don't gain anything from it. They don't join as recruitable units or anything like that. They just are there. And I think the reason for this is pretty mundane, right? Like, this is a pretty important section of the game. This is a defend map. If you don't get to the defend point in time, then it would be entirely dependent on these guys to defend the city for you. And I think Kaga probably just didn't want to make it luck-based, right? Like, at this point in this, the green unit AI is notoriously bad, even in the newer games. So back then, when the AI, probably was even worse, I think they wanted to make it obvious that, like, the player had full control over whether or not the city got captured, which I can respect. I just think it's funny that coincidentally this resulted in pretty much, I think, the only time of this ever happening. Getting generic blue units. That pretty much never happens again unless you count, like, Fire Emblem 14 capturing, maybe a couple other mechanics. You get you get phantoms in FE8, a couple other miscellaneous things here and there. So it's not unheard of outside of this game, but this is definitely the first time it happens, unless I'm sorely mistaken. And maybe there are some times in Gaiden, I don't really remember. So the goal is pretty straightforward. The Glades group needs to defend the city while Leif makes their way over there. In the meantime, there's houses to get. There's ballista all over the place. There's enemy reinforcements coming from every which way, and it's just fun. I think this is a good map. The defense sections are appropriately tense. I think it's one of those maps where you could end it really early, right? Like if you just beeline with Leif and all your other units, you'll get there pretty quickly. It won't be that bad. You'll be able to defend a few units, and then you'll have a chance to get everybody out. But if you want all the rewards, if you want to maximize your experience gain, if you want to make sure you're visiting all the houses, you do have to go out of your way a little bit. Some of the houses are actually pretty far removed from where you're fighting, so you have to make sure you have people posted up to defend while you go and collect those houses. And that's just, it's cool. I like having to manage my army in this way. I think it's a lot of fun. I think especially after this absolute drought of good maps, I think I'm really just excited to see a map that is, in my opinion, has an interesting gimmick, has an interesting kind of design. I want to say narrative, not necessarily in the story sense, but the way that you progress through the map is kind of tells a story in its own way. I got to come up with a name for that, right? Because there's got to be a term for maybe gameplay narrative. Is that a thing? That sounds like it would be a thing that some guy with a YouTube channel making a video essay probably came up with. The gameplay narrative of this map is very interesting, and kind of speaks to where your priorities are. Are you going to go for the house? Are you going to make sure that everybody gets out? I think a fun little, just not necessarily you don't get punished or anything for this, but I think it's a fun little challenge to see if you can get everybody alive. If you all the generic disposable blue units, you could just let those guys die. They're very easy to let die. They're not very strong. But I think it's fun to kind of see if you can hang on to them. Usually what I do, Glade is typically able to defend the city pretty well by himself, so I usually just have them all escape turn one, because I feel bad if the generics die. I just think it's fun to try to keep as many of them alive as possible. And then there's a few conversations throughout the map. Glade has one with Leif. Glade has one with Selfina. I think he even has one with Finn. There's a couple ones, and they're all pretty generic, I'm so glad you're here. We're gonna do really well because you're here. I'm glad you're finally with us. Selfina, actually, they're husband and wife, or they're at least they're engaged or something. I don't remember. But they're lovers in some capacity. So their conversation is a bit more heartfelt. It's a little bit more emotional. And he actually gives her an item, the Brave Bow. This is the last of the 4 Brave items. And once again, despite being pretty much, set up to be used by one specific character, it is usable by anybody with the proper bow rank. I always thought that this is pretty weird. I thought it was weird with the Brave Axe. It seems pretty heavily suggested that it's supposed to be Halvin's personal axe, but it's usable by anyone. Same thing here, really. It's kind of set up to be Selfina's personal bow that she gets from her lover in a moment of relief that they're finally seeing each other again, and Ronan can take it and use it or whatever the fuck. I will say that Selfina is probably the best dedicated bow user in the game, which isn't saying much. Bows are not very good in this game, but if you're going to use it on anybody, it's probably going to be her. Although I guess there are some units who are better that get access to bows. I think Xavier comes to mind. Some of maybe if you trained up Dawson really well or something, I don't know. But no, Selfina's probably your best bet for using it anyway. It makes her a little bit better off, I think, because she's kind of bad. So having a way to actually get kills and get experience is going to be really good for her. Alright, and that's pretty much it for this map. Like, I don't really have a whole lot else to say about it. This is going to end up being a pretty short episode, I think. These are just 3 really simple maps. I think maybe, if I'm being a little bit generous with myself, I think I would say that I'm getting a little bit better at being succinct. I think especially 12X is a very complicated map that I think takes a lot of explaining. But I think I summed it up pretty well, considering it is a little bit after midnight. I am very tired. I do have work tomorrow, so I should probably go to sleep soon. But I think I did a pretty good job summing up all these maps without laboring on and on and on about certain various mechanics and stuff like that. So, yeah, this map isn't particularly complicated. It's just good. I like it. Now, Glade is a fun unit to talk about. Let's start with the gameplay. So in terms of gameplay, he is a Duke Knight, which is the same class as it is Finn's promoted class. So he can only use lances and then swords while he is dismounted. And he's good. He's not a very powerful unit. He's got like decent stats across the board. He has good lance rank. I don't think he has any skills. He's a pretty solid unit. He's like a 6 out of 10 unit, a 7 out of 10 unit. He's on a horse, that's really good. Kanto's very good in this game. But otherwise, it's just like, we have Finn at home. Finn at home is Glade, right? Which isn't bad. Finn at home is still very, very good. Being the discount dollar store version of arguably the best character in the game is nothing to scoff at, right? So let's give him some credit. Now, in terms of his character, I think that's where things are a lot funnier. So Glade isn't like a particularly noteworthy character. I think he's alright. He's not bad. He has a nice little relationship with Selfina. He has some good conversations with Leif and Finn. He's just the standard, generic, loyal knight archetype. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not particularly memorable, but I wouldn't say it's bad. I wouldn't say it's, maybe like the worst character in the series or anything like that. Now, if you know anything about Glade and you haven't played this game, it is probably what I am about to talk about. Now, in Fire Emblem Heroes, which is the mobile game, if you're not I don't know how you would not be familiar with Fire Emblem Heroes, but just in case, just so we're all on the same page, Fire Emblem Heroes is a mobile game where you use a gacha mechanic where you spend orbs to have a random chance of pulling various characters from across the series, in like a lottery type system. And every year they have a poll where every person votes for their favorite Fire Emblem character, and the top 4 characters, the top 2 males and the top 2 females, get alternative units with like cool outfits or with special abilities and stuff like that. I don't play the mobile game. I did for a little while, but it's not really my cup of tea. So I ended up just dropping it. Now, I think the Choose Your Legends is like a really cool idea. That's what it's called, by the way. The poll is called Choose Your Legends. I believe we're actually, at the time I'm recording this, we are coming up on Choose Your Legends. I believe it's 7 we're up to now, which is fucking crazy to me. Really, 7? Hold on, though. Let me check. Okay, so yes, the Choose Your Legends 6 ended in January, but we have not actually gotten the final, like the new updated outfits for these characters yet. But in the very first Choose Your Legends poll, the single lowest ranking unit in the entire series, and this included like a lot of really generic bosses and random miscellaneous characters, was Glade. I think that's just really funny to me. He's not a bad character. I don't even think he's the least memorable character in Thracia 776. I think he's like just memorable enough to escape meme territory, because I think the most forgettable character would be Trude, like I was talking about, Trude from last chapter. But I think he's so bad that he's kind of considered a meme, whereas Glade is like just kind of generic. He's there. He's got enough of a character for him to like not be a meme, but it's not a very good one. It's not a very like interesting one. So I think a lot of people kind of they kind of just decided, I guess fuck Glade. Like he's definitely no one's favorite. I can understand that much. So at the end of the map, Leif captures the city, or gets successfully enters the city after beating back the reinforcements. And this is where we see Lenoan. We've seen her before. I think we saw her at the cutscene at the beginning of this chapter. But he mostly just, touches base with Lenoan. And there's a really nice scene here where Lenoan is kind of like, she's been having to maintain this facade of pure conviction and not being able to let any weakness show. This is a pretty shitty, overdone trope. I think it's nice in a vacuum. I think when you take it in the context of a woman really wants to cry, but she can't cry because she needs to be strong. But it's it always kind of smelled fishy to me. This is not a very nice archetype. I think it kind of is. I don't want to make a bigger deal out of it than it really is. I think it's pretty casually sexist. The implication to me is that it's in her nature to want to cry, but she's not allowing herself to. This is not a trope that is exclusive to women by any means, but it is. I see it more often with women, I think, in these stories, right? They're asked to equip this mantle that they're not mentally prepared for, and usually the explanation why they're not mentally prepared is just because they're a woman. I don't know. I don't again, I don't want to make a big deal out of it. They're not saying anything suspect here, really. It's just kind of a trope I don't really care for usually. I like it more with men, because I think it is kind of, at that point, it's kind of a commentary on toxic masculinity, which is a really big thing. And I'm sure it can be done effectively with women as well. I just think that when it's just kind of played straight like this, it feels kind of icky, and I don't really care for it. But, this game was written in 1992 or whatever the fuck, so it's understandable. No, not fucking Gaiden came out in 1992. This series is so comically behind the game always. This game came out in 1999, I think is what it was. Jesus Christ, 98 maybe? Ugh, something like that. It was well after the N64 came out. I can tell you that much. And she breaks down and starts crying, and Leif is the shoulder for her to cry on. It's just, I don't know. It reeks of big strong man come in to save day and let women cry and be woman. I don't know. That's my soapbox. You guys can roll your eyes and say, oh, you're reading too much into it. Maybe I am. Like I said, it's about 12:30 at night. I had a long day, so maybe I am reading a little bit too much into it, but that's what it feels like to me. And you know what? You make a podcast talking about every single chapter in the fucking Fire Emblem series, and you tell me what your opinion is, alright? So have fun with that. Alright, and that's the end of the chapter. So, and that's the end of our 3 chapters. In case you want to get out of here, now that we're done talking about the chapters, you can do that. But first, let's go ahead and talk about our map gauntlet for the episode. Now, if you remember, at the end of last episode, I kind of had a run back where I said, I was kind of going back between Chapter 9 and Chapter 3. I ended up settling on Chapter 3 as my favorite, but it wasn't, I still had a lot of problems with it. I think Chapter 3, I might end up doing another retraction and changing my mind about this again. I think that Chapter 13 is actually going to... first of all, yeah, Chapter 13-1. Are you really surprised? Chapter 12X is the fucking worst map of all time. Chapter 12 isn't very good. Chapter 13 is the first map in a very long time that I've actually had fun with, and I think it's probably better than Chapter 3. Chapter 3 had... Chapter 13 basically has a lot of what I liked in Chapter 3, except with less bullshit. It has optional side objectives, it has anti-turtling incentives, and it's a fun map. It's good. It has a neat gimmick, it has some cool novel ideas in there, and it's just a lot of fun to play. I really enjoyed playing it again, more so than any other map I've played up to this point in this game. Frankly, so yeah, it's just a fun game, or it's just a fun map. So yeah, I'm gonna put it ahead of Chapter 3, and it'll probably okay. So I'm gonna let you guys in on a little bit of a spoiler. Chapter 14 is probably my favorite map in the game. It's very good. I like Chapter 14 a lot. So we'll see if that maybe dethrones it next episode, but we'll, if I could be wrong. We'll see, and then maybe something will dethrone that. Who knows? Whatever it may be. Maybe I'll have a really shitty experience with Chapter 14. Okay, and the last thing I want to talk about is news. Now, this is kind of weird, right? Because by the time this episode goes out, the news will be outdated, probably, but let's just go ahead and talk about it anyway. I recorded the last episode at the end of July, so... Oh, there's a Lysithea... this is the Claude and Lysithea figurines I was talking about last time. Yeah, there's some stuff about eShop closure. That stinks. 3 Hopes North American... there's some stuff for... if you're still a My Nintendo store guy, you can get some stuff for 3 Hopes. That's kind of cool. And that's it, yep. So nothing really in the news realm, and there probably won't be by the time I record next episode either. This is a pretty slow news cycle when it comes to the series most of the time. I was hoping that by the time... I didn't decide to go on hiatus, right? It was just always something like taking up my time. But when I realized kind of like it might be a full year since I get, or like at least like 8 to 10 months before I get another episode out, I was not really thinking that I would have to be worried about not getting another Fire Emblem game. It's been so fucking long. This has been probably the biggest gap between Fire Emblem games in a very, very long time, possibly ever. So I'm hoping. I mean, again, I don't really count 3 Hopes. My thought, and I have a theory as to what's going on here. I could be way off, but Fire Emblem Warriors came out, right? And then Fire Emblem 3 Houses was developed a lot in part by Team Ninja and Koei Tecmo, or whatever team. I don't know technically what studio it was, but the team that worked on Warriors also worked a lot on 3 Houses, and it shows, right? Like there's a lot of like crossover in terms of like the visuals and stuff. There's the whole like battalion system. There's that part of the game where you can like zoom in and like have them run around the battlefield, very similar to a Warriors game. So my theory, my kind of tinfoil hat theory, is that the next Fire Emblem game in the main series will also be pretty heavily influenced by the team that's working on the Warriors games. That's why we haven't seen a new game yet, is because they've been spending all their time working on the new Warriors game. And now that they're done with that, hopefully they will start development on FE17. Jesus, 17 games. Huh. I got a long way to go, huh? But yeah, that's my theory. I have no idea if it's true or not. Hopefully we'll see one soon. But yeah, there's been like 2 Pokemon games that came out since the last fucking Fire Emblem game. It's very funny. Yeah, so anyway, that's about all I have. Oh, in terms of what I've been doing, I got my hands on a copy of a little game called Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Xenoblade Chronicles, I might have talked about this game before, but in case you're not familiar, Xenoblade Chronicles is an RPG, originally came out on the Wii, and did not see enormous financial success, but did develop a very strong cult following. People who have played it generally felt very positively about it, and eventually the audience grew so large that the main character from that game, Shulk, ended up getting put in Super Smash Bros., which kind of like skyrocketed the series' popularity. It got a whole bunch of sequels. It got a whole bunch of re-releases. There was like I don't really want to call it a spin-off game. Before it got a proper sequel, it got like a spiritual successor in the form of Xenoblade Chronicles X, which came out on the Wii U. But then after that one didn't do super well, partially because it was the Wii U. But after that, they did get a proper sequel in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And I mean, I guess to just briefly give my opinions on it, I fucking love Xenoblade Chronicles 1 for the Wii, and for all its re-releases and stuff. It is probably my favorite game of all time. I kind of go back and forth. There's like it's kind of hard to explain. There's like another game that I really like. It's like an obscure RPG for the PS1. Maybe I'll go into that some other time. But for the most part, like if you stop me on the street and ask me what my favorite game was, I'd tell you to leave me alone, and I don't know who you are. But no, I would probably say Xenoblade Chronicles just because it's a very, very, very close second, and it's also a lot easier to explain. I did not like 2. I thought Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was actually a very, very, very bad game. I know that's kind of an unpopular opinion. I think there's a pretty divisive, it's a pretty strong divide in the community, whether 1 or 2 is better. But I think for the most part, everyone agrees that, like, even regardless of which one you prefer, both games are good. I do not agree with that. I think that Xenoblade 2 is a very bad game. It just has a lot of shit that I didn't like. But 3 came out. I was cautiously optimistic. And I have about 75 hours in the game so far. Came out a few weeks ago. So, I've been putting a good amount of time into it, but not as much as some people have. And so far, I would say it's fine. I don't really have a strong opinion on it right now. It's a very okay game. It's just kind of all right. I don't like parts of it. I do really like other parts of it. But it's just very middle of the road. I don't really have a strong opinion on it right now, which after 75 hours, I think I should have a strong opinion on it. I'm considering dropping it just because, like, I'm not very invested, and it's gonna be like another, like, probably 150 hours of a game that I'm just not that into. But we'll see where that goes. It's definitely better than 2. It's definitely better than 2. I'll tell you that much. I think that it's a fine game. Give it like a 6.5, whereas I'd give 2 like a 3, and I'd give 1 like a 10 out of 10. So, if that's any context, it's a pretty middle of the road game for me. Don't love it, don't hate it. It's fine. So yeah, that's all that's been going on with me. And at this point, we've been going for about 2 hours. It's gonna get cut down a lot, but still, that's probably gonna be a pretty solid length episode. So we're gonna call it here, guys. I hope you have a nice rest of your day. And next episode, we'll be tackling chapters 14, 14X, and 15. So I'll see you then. All right, have a good day. Bye.